Good morning again, and welcome to the fifth installment of our Read Aloud. So today we're going to be doing chapters 9 and 10, and there's actually only, I think, 18 there's 19 chapters altogether. So we're about halfway done once we're done with these two chapters, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to start putting 2 of these out a week, and then we can sit through. Chapter 9. Which way out? The stone mound smelled musty inside, like an old cellar. Since I was holding the flashlight, it was my turn to go first. I crawled in front of Louise. We had to creep low on our hands and knees because the ceiling was so low. I don't like this, Louise, I yelled. I was shouting to make myself feel braver. I don't either, Louise called back. In front of me, I saw a hole leading to a passage. I flashed the light through it. The tunnel was small, but it looked as if it opened into a big space. Is there a circle next to the map? I asked, still hollering. Do you remember? I can hear you, Hannah, said Louise. You don't have to yell. And yes, the next mark on the map was a circle. Well, a circle could be an opening, right? I said. Maybe a passageway? Maybe, said Louise. I took a deep breath and stuck my arms inside. Then I pulled myself into the tunnel. Within 2 seconds, my knapsack got stuck. I was wedged in like Winnie the Pooh in his honey tree. Or was it Rabbit's hole? I'm stuck, I cried. Now I was really yelling. Yank on my legs, Louise! Don't panic, Hannah, called Louise. I'll get you back out. He tugged on my feet while I pushed backward with my hands. I was really jammed in there. I wiggled around a lot. Finally, after what seemed like forever, I got myself loose. I crawled back out. This is stupid, I complained. This treasure might not even be in here. I don't know, Hannah, said Louise slowly. This could be the perfect hiding place. How do we know some skinny pirate didn't stash the mask in here where no one would expect? He had a point there. I hauled off my knapsack and dropped it on the rocky floor. So then she has an image. The pictures on the side sometimes are Hannah thinking about her own story. So that's a really good model for how you can draw information as I'm reading or as you're reading your own books. So it says, I wonder... What does it say? I wonder if this is how the pirate ended up, the one who made the map. Sometimes it's hard for me to read when it looks like handwriting backwards. I can usually, but sometimes if it's like that, it's hard. The only problem is, if the cave is big, we might get lost in there, said Louise. Oh, great, I moaned. I know, we can leave a trail behind us so we can find our way back, Louise said. You mean like Hansel and Gretel? I asked. Do you have any breadcrumbs handy? Well, we need a string or tape or something like that, Louise said, ignoring my sarcasm. Suddenly, I remembered the roll of orange tape the angels had left in my backpack. So that's what it was for. Those angels never let me down. I dug into the backpack and found the tape. The light from my flashlight reflected off the roll like neon. Perfect, said Louise. That's the kind of tape spelunkers use. What lunkers? I said. Is that Mayan? No, it's English, said Louise, chuckling. Spelunkers? They're people who explore caves? Oh. So, what do we do with the tape? I asked. We leave strips on the ground behind us so we can find our way back, Louise explained. He took the tape from me. I'll do it since you're leading, he said. I turned back to the opening where I'd gotten stuck. I still didn't like the idea of going in there again, but the faster we explored this cave, the faster we'd get out. I left my backpack behind this time and wiggled into the hole. I crawled on my belly like a lizard. This time, I made it through to the other side. What's in there? Louise called through the tunnel. Nothing, I yelled back, flashing the light around. Just a big empty cave. Then a shudder ran through me. Brr, it's freezing in here, Louise, I shouted. Give me some light, he hollered. I'm coming to check it out. I flashed the light into the tunnel, and Luis crawled in. As soon as he reached the big cavern, he stuck a few pieces of tape on the rocks behind him. We flashed the beam around in the pitch blackness. Boy, was it dark. Luis and I couldn't even see each other unless the light was right on us. I hope the batteries in this flashlight hold out, I said nervously. And I hope no one else is in the cave with us, Luis added. Yikes! I hadn't even thought of that! This conversation was giving me the willies. Well, let's keep going, Luis said. Map pieces. We pulled our maps back out again. Here's another circle mark, said Luis, pointing, before we get to the X. We flashed the light around slowly along the walls of the cavern again. We saw a few more passages here and there on the roof, walls, and floor. How are we supposed to know which one to go through? I said. Luis shrugged. Don't know. Guess we just pick one. So that's what we did. We picked one and squeezed through. We ended up in another hollow cavern, but this one was even spookier. It looked like it was growing giant rocky teeth. They're stalactites, said Luis. So these are the stalactites. They grow. So stalactite has a C and a T, so it's the ceiling and the top. So stalactite comes down from the ceiling, and stalagmite is the ground in the mud. So stalagmite goes up. Fun little geology quiz. We learned about them in school, I said, and the ones growing up from the floor are stalagmites, right? Right, said Luis. Listen, I said, grabbing Luis's shirt. Do you hear something? At first, the cave seemed absolutely, totally dead silent. But coming from somewhere, we found a faint drip, drip, drip. What do you guys think that is? Give me a little prediction. Maybe send me a Flipgrid, send me an email. What do you think that is? Pause the video and go write it down, okay? Okay. And then we have here an image that Hannah made of the stalagmites and stalactites. Drip, drip, drip. What is that? I asked. It's just groundwater seeping in through the rocks, Luis answered. That's how the stalactites form, the minerals in the water. It was starting to sound like my friend David, a walking encyclopedia. Suddenly, I felt all clammy. The dripping water was making me shiver. My teeth started shattering from the cold. I really want to get out of here, I whispered, my freezing jaw all tight. I don't see another sign of treasure, do you? I think we hit another dead end. I guess so. But that's okay. Look at the bright side. Now we know where not to look. We'll just come back and continue our treasure hunt tomorrow. We turned around to find the passage we had just come through. Luis, where's the tape? I asked. Oops, said Luis, cringing. I forgot. Do you think we could tell which opening we were supposed to go back through? No way! There were at least 10 tunnels, and any one of them could have been ours. I started to panic. It was dark, I was freezing, and now we were lost. Luis was pretty cool until we started talking about bones. He happened to mention that outlaws used to hide in caves just like this one. Once they figured out the coast was clear, they'd sneak back out to find the treasure they'd hidden. But sometimes they just couldn't find their way back out. Luis said, so they just kept going deeper and deeper into the earth. How awful, I said. Other outlaws went crazy from the dead silence and total darkness, Luis continued. Spelunkers didn't find them until years later. And? I asked nervously. Nothing was left but bones. Luis finished. Oh, great. Who's going to find our bones someday, Luis? I asked. I wasn't joking. I was truly terrified now. So was Luis. His eyes were searching from one passage opening to the next, looking hopelessly lost. If this wasn't a time to call on my angels, I don't know what was. Aurora! Demi! I yelled. Lyra, Lori, will someone help us out of here? I didn't even care that Louise heard me. Please, I begged. Help! The help was really loud, so it echoed off the rocky walls. Sounded like, help, 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 help. Look, Hannah, Louise shouted suddenly, pointing. There's something over there. It's glowing in the dark. That is the end of chapter 9. And your mini assignment is to give me a little prediction. What do you think that light is? We know Hannah called on her angels, but we also know she's in a cave. So what do you think that light is? Make your predictions. Pause the video before we keep going, because I don't want you to spoil it for yourself. But tell me what you think those sparkly letters, the sparkly lights are, okay? Chapter 10, The Marigold Path. Louise was right. There on the wall of the cave was a glowing message. It was the same color as the glow-in-the-dark stars in my bedroom ceiling. The angels had answered me. I was sure Lori had sent it, even though the message wasn't in angel code. The symbols looked like a circle of butterflies, framing one of the passages. Boy, your angels really are leading the way, aren't they? Said Louise. He sounded impressed and a little odd. So look, we have the butterflies back again. So it's a picture of the cave with the messages from her angels all around it. And remember, Hannah's big on butterflies. I wouldn't want to think we were really alone in this cave, I told him. We scurried over to the opening, and I dove through first. It led to a tunnel that opened into a big cavern. Louise! I shouted. There's orange tape in here. This is definitely the way we came in. We followed the trail of tape the rest of the way, and soon we were back to where I'd left my backpack. We crawled out into the moonlight and breathed in the fresh, warm air with relief. Louise led the way back to town. I had no idea what time it was now, but the plaza was hopping. Some teenage boys were parading through the street, carrying a coffin. People threw oranges and flowers and coins into it. Every time I did, a corpse sat up grinning. Not a real one, of course, just a dummy. Or so I thought. Gracias, said the dead body. Thank you. The corpse was a kid in a costume. But it was scary anyway. This is her visualization of what happened. Just then I saw Paco, Luis's brother. He was heading straight toward us. Where have you been, Luis? Paco said. Abuelita was with him. We were worried about you two, said Abuelita. She was holding a bundle of white lilies in her arms. Behind her was what seemed to be everyone in Luis's family. His mom, dad, brothers, and sisters. They were all carrying huge bouquets of flowers. There were lilies and chrysanthemums, but mostly I saw bright orange marigolds. They were bigger than any marigolds we grow in our garden back home. Huge blossoms, almost as big as the oranges from Dude Superfoods. Everyone was dressed up. The girls and women were wearing colorful dresses and skirts, and the guys wore crisp white embroidered shirts. I felt a little self-conscious. My jeans and jacket were all grubbed up from our treasure hunting exhibition. I went over to Abuelita. I wonder if maybe I could borrow some clothes from somebody? I asked. Just for tonight? I did a curtsy in my filthy jeans. She smiled. Please, she said. Wear whatever you'd like. She motioned to Paco. Show Hannah where the blouses and skirts are. Paco took me over to a table that was covered for the night. He threw back the cloth. The table was piled with folded handmade clothes. Abuelita made these, Paco told me. Wow, they're beautiful. So here's an image of Hannah. The clothes made me want to dance, even in my clunky hiking boots. I sorted through for a dress embroidered with flowers like the one Abuelita was wearing, but I didn't have time to be too picky. Instead, I found a white blouse with ruffly sleeves and a long woven skirt. Abuelita showed me where I could make a quick change behind a tree. Que bonita, said Abuelita when I came out. I did feel pretty, actually. The clothes made me want to twirl around and dance. It's time for the procession around the ceremony, Louise whispered to me a few minutes later. I joined the family, walking between Paco and Louise. We must have looked like a glowing parade of candles. Little flames moving through the dark. Some of Luis's relatives had picnic baskets of foods with them. Others were carrying shovels and rakes over their shoulders. Shovels and rakes? That seemed a little weird to me. They're not going to dig up any graves, are they? I asked Luis in a low voice. Luis frowned. Of course not, he said. He sounded insulted again. This is not a creepy holiday, okay? Right. Sorry, I mumbled. I stuck my face in the bouquet of marigolds Luis had given me to carry, deciding it was best to shut up and act like part of the family. My bouquet practically covered me up. It was so huge. I felt like a walking marigold, with my hands and feet and head sticking out. I watched as everyone pulled off petals and tossed them in a path on the ground. I started doing it too. Marigolds are the flowers of the dead, Paco explained. I figured that was probably because marigolds grow in the autumn, when all the summer flowers are dying. The spirits of the dead follow the paths of the petals, Paco went on. That's how they find our way to the feast. And here's Hannah's visualization of her dropping all of the flowers, or the flower petals. Luis told me about some of the family spirits who would be invited to join the ceremony. Abuelita's sister, Esperanza, would be there, and so would Luis and Paco's grandfather, Carlos. All the great-grandparents were coming too, following along on the marigold path. I looked behind us a couple of times, just to check. I didn't see anyone, but I held my bouquet a little tighter anyway. When we arrived at the cemetery, I saw people raking weeds from the graves. They were also digging holes to put metal pipes in to use as flower vases. So that's what the shovels and rakes were for. Luis's family went straight to work. Pretty soon, the graves of Esperanza, Carlos, and the great-grandparents were covered with flowers. And candles, too. Now their resting places looked tidy and colorful. All around the cemetery, tall candles flickered in the dark. A few people strummed guitars softly, and the music floated in through the night. There was a ton of food around, too. Everyone in the graveyard pulled out a picnic basket for a candlelit evening feast. Paco said the women had worked for days, cooking and baking special foods. Now, this is a really good part to visualize. You can draw it. I'll read that part again so you can get a nice picture of what exactly it looks like. All around the cemetery, tall candles flickered in the dark. A few people strummed guitars softly, and the music floated through the night. There was a ton of food around, too. Everyone in the graveyard pulled out a picnic basket for a candlelit evening feast. Paco said the women had worked for days, cooking and baking special foods. There's flowers, everything's being made up nicely. It's not the kind of cemetery you might think of. So do a visualization, draw a picture. What do you think the ceremony looks like? There's people there, right? What do you think their faces look like? How do you think they feel? So try to draw me a picture and then tell me what you think. This is Hannah's illustration. But that does not mean that that's always the only thing you need to worry about. Because if you look at Hannah's, there's not a super amount of detail. You guys have time to put a lot of detail in yours. Come and help me, Hannah, called Abuelita, laying down a picnic cloth on the ground. Sure, I said. I was glad to pitch in. Luisa's grandmother handed me a big loaf of bread to set on the cloth. It was decorated with bones made out of colored frosting. Then she handed me another loaf. This one had a little face peeking out of a frosting robe. What are these? I asked. Pan de muertos, said Abuelita. Bread of the dead. They're meant to be fun. I baked a surprise into each loaf. What's the surprise? I asked as I put it down. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? Abuelita teased. Then she winked at me. And then here's Hannah's visual of the Pan de Muertos. There's a tiny candy skull inside, Luis said, coming up behind me. He was carrying a platter of what looked like little dumplings. It's a tradition. The little kids love it. Cool, I said. Luis offered me one of the dumplings. Empanadas, he said, holding the plate toward me. Don't they smell good? They did, and I was starving. What's inside them? I asked, my mouth full. The empanadas were delicious. Luis has one filled with chicken, Abuelita called. Paco's have apples. Before I could say gracias, Abuelita handed me another plate of food. Tamales de mole, she said. You can set these over there, Hannah. I must have looked confused. Mole is a spicy sauce with chocolate in it. Muy delicioso, said Abuelita. You'll have to try one. I like everything that has chocolate in it. Mole was no exception. Now the whole graveyard smelled delicious. The graves and grass in between were covered with plates full of tortillas, empanadas, and tamales de mole. There were bowls of oranges and avocados and bananas, too. I had never seen anything like it. Paco had brought a big straw hat, called a sombrero, for the fiesta. He filled it with Day of the Dead candy. Chocolate skulls, sugar skeletons, little candy coffins. When the candy's gone, you can have the When the candy's gone, you can have the hat, Hannah, he told me. I was really happy about that. I love hats. The sombrero was trimmed in turquoise and red, and it matched my skirt perfectly. That's my tummy. And the skull and skeleton business didn't seem so frightening anymore. In fact, it wasn't scary at all. This whole fiesta was making me feel a lot differently about cemeteries. I'd never seen a graveyard so full of life. That's our end of chapter 10. So we're not ending on a cliffhanger today, but we're ending on a little bit different. Most of that last chapter was describing what Hannah was experiencing and what she was seeing. This is a huge celebration for Luis and everybody in his family and his culture. I want you to think about a holiday that you guys have that's as big and important as Day of the Dead is for Luis and his family. You can pick Christmas or Thanksgiving, maybe Easter, 4th of July. Come up with a holiday that you know a lot about, that you could describe the way that Hannah described her experience. Because I want to learn all about your holidays, and I think it could be fun to read about them. And if at least 2 of you do the assignment, I'll write one too, so you can see what I do for Thanksgiving. Okay? I am so excited that I got to read to you today, and we're more than halfway done. So we'll start with 11 and 12 next time. Bye, guys.